At Forest Lawn Memorial Park, billionaire James Harper stands frozen by his son Liam's grave, haunted by a loss he can't escape. Then, a faint sob breaks the silence. Behind the headstone hides Emma, a shivering homeless girl who claims Liam was her only friend. "He told me to find you," she whispers, unraveling a secret that shakes James to his core. Who was Liam protecting? Why did he trust this stranger with his final wish? As James digs deeper, he uncovers a web of betrayal, corporate greed, and a truth that could change everything. Will Emma's courage heal a broken man, or will the past destroy them both? Stay with us. This story of loss, redemption, and a promise under the moonlight will leave you speechless. What legacy will Liam's kindness spark? You won't believe the answer. James Harper stood before his son Liam's grave at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, his heart as heavy as the polished marble headstone. The billionaire tech mogul, once a titan of Silicon Valley, felt like a hollow shell. His tailored coat did little to shield him from the biting wind, and his trembling hands placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave. The inscription read, "Liam Harper, beloved son." Every visit carved the same wound deeper. Liam, his bright, kind-hearted boy, was gone, taken by a car accident that left too many questions unanswered. James closed his eyes, memories of Liam flooding back. The boy had a laugh that could light up a room and a curiosity that made James proud. But that night, a reckless driver had stolen him away. James had built empires, signed billion-dollar deals, yet he couldn't save his son. Guilt gnawed at him. He'd been too busy conquering boardrooms to truly know Liam. Now he lived in isolation, his sprawling mansion a silent prison, his wealth meaningless. A faint sob snapped him out of his thoughts. James turned, scanning the rows of headstones. The sound came again, soft but unmistakable, from behind Liam's grave. He stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching on the grass, and peered around the marble slab. There, curled up against the stone, was a girl, no older than 10. Her thin frame shivered in a tattered jacket, her bare feet smudged with dirt. Tangled brown hair framed her pale face, and her wide, frightened eyes locked onto his. "Hey, it's okay," James said, his voice low, careful not to startle her. "What are you doing here?" The girl flinched, clutching her knees tighter. I didn't mean to bother you," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please don't make me leave." James knelt, ignoring the damp ground soaking his trousers. "You're not in trouble. What's your name?" She hesitated, then murmured, Emma Wilson." "Emma," he repeated, softening his tone. "Why are you here? It's not safe to be out here alone." Her lips quivered, and she hugged herself tighter. I come to talk to Liam. He was my friend." James froze, his breath catching. "You knew my son?" Emma nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "He was my only friend. He'd find me at the park near his school, bring me sandwiches, juice, sometimes a blanket. He said I mattered, even when no one else thought so." Her voice broke. Before he was gone, he told me if I ever needed help, I should find you. He said you'd know what to do." The words hit James like a punch. Liam had never mentioned Emma, yet this girl spoke of him with such clarity, such trust. His mind reeled. What else didn't he know about his son? Had Liam lived a secret life, one filled with kindness James had been too distracted to see? He studied Emma, her hollow cheeks, the fear in her eyes, and felt a pang in his chest. She was a child, alone in a world that had clearly failed her. "Where are your parents, Emma?" he asked gently. Her gaze dropped. "My mom got sick. She didn't wake up one day. My dad? He left after that, said he couldn't handle it." She paused, her voice small. "I've been on my own since." James's jaw tightened. "On your own? Where do you stay?" "There's an old storage shed by the park," she said, almost defensively. "It's not so bad. I keep dry when it rains." The image of this child sleeping in a shed while he lived in a mansion with empty rooms twisted something inside him. He thought of the system that let her slip through the cracks. Overworked social workers, underfunded shelters, a society that turned away from kids like Emma. His wealth, his power had shielded him from that reality, But Liam had seen it. Liam had cared. "You're not staying in a shed tonight," James said, his voice firm but kind. He shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric swallowed her small frame, but she clutched it like a lifeline. "Come with me. You need a warm place to sleep." Emma's eyes widened. "Why would you help me?" "Because Liam did," James said, his throat tight. "And that's enough for me." She hesitated, then nodded, her small hand slipping into his. As they walked toward his car, James felt a flicker of something he hadn't in years. Purpose. But with it came questions. What had Liam been protecting Emma from? Why had he trusted James to help her? And what secrets had his son carried to his grave? This was no ordinary encounter. It was the start of a journey that would unravel everything James thought he knew about Liam, about himself, and about a world that had let a girl like Emma disappear. He glanced at her, clutching his coat, and made a silent vow. Whatever Liam had wanted for her, he'd make it happen. James guided Emma through the grand oak doors of his Beverly Hills mansion, a sprawling estate that gleamed with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Yet, despite its opulence, the house felt like a museum, cold, untouched, a monument to a life James no longer lived. Emma's bare feet patted softly on the polished floor, her eyes wide as she clutched his oversized coat. She looked out of place, a fragile figure in a world of excess, and James felt a pang of shame. This was his home, but it had never felt like one since Liam was gone. "Come on, let's get you something to eat," he said, leading her to the kitchen. He fumbled with a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, his hands unsteady from years of relying on staff. Emma perched on a stool, watching him with cautious curiosity. He slid a sandwich and a glass of milk across the counter, and she hesitated before taking a small bite. Her face lit up, a fleeting smile breaking through her guarded expression. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No one's made me food in a long time." James swallowed the lump in his throat. "Eat as much as you want. There's plenty." After dinner, he showed her to a guest room, its bed piled with soft blankets and pillows. He handed her a pair of Liam's old pajamas, the fabric still carrying the faint scent of his son's laundry detergent. Emma clutched them, her fingers tracing the faded superhero logo. "These were Liam's?" she asked. James nodded, his chest tight. He loved superheroes, thought they could save everyone. Emma's eyes softened. He tried to, for me at least. As she changed and settled into bed, James lingered in the doorway, watching her small form sink into the blankets. She looked so peaceful, so safe, and it stirred a memory. Nights when he'd sat by Liam's bed, reading stories until his son drifted off. Back then, he'd promised himself he'd always be there for Liam. He'd failed. But maybe, just maybe, he could keep a promise for Emma. "Emma," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Tell me more about Liam. What was he like with you?" She pulled the blanket closer, her voice tentative. "He'd find me at the park, by the swings. I was always alone, and kids at school, they laughed at me, called me trash girl because my clothes were dirty. Teachers didn't care, they said I'd never amount to anything." Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. Liam was different. He'd sit with me, share his lunch, peanut butter sandwiches, mostly. He told me stories about superheroes, said I was strong like them. Once, he gave me his jacket when it was raining. Said I deserved to be warm, even if the world didn't think so. James's heart ached. He pictured Liam, his quiet, thoughtful boy, reaching out to a child the world ignored. "He never told me about you," he admitted, guilt creeping into his voice. Emma shrugged. "He said you were busy, but he believed in you. He said, 'My dad's tough, but he's got a big heart. He'll help you if you need him.'" Her words cut deep. James had spent Liam's life chasing deals, building a tech empire, thinking money was the answer to everything. But Liam had seen through that. He'd seen what truly mattered. Driven by a need to know more, James excused himself and slipped into Liam's old room. The space was untouched, posters of Spider-Man on the walls, a telescope by the window. He opened a drawer and found a small, worn journal, its pages filled with Liam's neat handwriting. One entry stopped him cold. "Dad thinks money fixes everything, but I think it's about listening. There are kids like Emma everywhere, kids no one sees. I want to help them. I wish Dad would understand." James's vision blurred with tears. Liam had lived a life of compassion, one James had been too blind to notice. He returned to Emma's room, finding her still awake, staring at the ceiling. "Emma," he said, his voice thick, "you're not invisible. Not to Liam and not to me." She looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Promise," he said, and for the first time he meant it. As Emma drifted to sleep, James knew this was only the beginning. Liam's kindness had brought Emma to him, but what had his son been hiding? And why had he placed such faith in a father who'd let him down? The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of James Harper's Beverly Hills mansion, casting soft light on Emma as she sat at the kitchen counter, nibbling on a pancake. Her small hands gripped the fork tightly, as if she still couldn't believe the food was real. James watched her, his mind churning with the weight of her words from the night before. Liam had seen her, cared for her, and trusted James to do the same. But why had Liam kept Emma a secret? And what else had he hidden? "Emma," James said, sliding a glass of orange juice toward her, "you mentioned Liam at the park. Did he ever talk about his friends? Anyone he spent a lot of time with?" Emma paused, her fork hovering. "Yeah, there was this one boy, Noah Carter. They were super close, always laughing and stuff." Her face clouded. "But they fought once, a bad one, right before..." She trailed off, her eyes dropping to her plate. James leaned forward, keeping his voice gentle. "Before what, Emma? It's okay to tell me." She bit her lip, hesitant. "Before Liam didn't come back. They were at the park, by the swings. Noah was yelling, really mad. He said, 'You're gonna ruin everything for my dad.' Liam just stood there, calm, and said, 'I have to do what's right.' I didn't get it, but Noah stormed off. Liam looked scared, but he still gave me his apple after like nothing happened." James's pulse quickened. Noah Carter. The name rang a bell. Liam's best friend, the kid who'd been at their house for countless sleepovers. But a fight? Liam had never mentioned any trouble with Noah. The official report had called Liam's death a tragic accident, a hit and run by a drunk driver. But Emma's story cracked that narrative open. What had Liam been standing up for? That afternoon, James slipped back into Liam's room, the air heavy with memories. He rummaged through a box of Liam's belongings, pulling out an old jacket, its pockets stuffed with crumpled papers. Among them was a folded note, the handwriting unmistakably Liam's. James's hands shook as he read, "Emma, if I'm not here anymore, tell Dad I'm sorry. I didn't want to disappoint him, but I have to protect kids like you. It's what heroes do." The words hit like a tidal wave. Liam had known something dangerous enough to apologize for. James clutched the note, his vision blurring. His son, barely a teenager, had carried a burden James hadn't seen. The guilt was suffocating. He'd been too consumed by board meetings and stock prices to notice Liam's courage, his fight for something bigger. Determined for answers, James called Clara Nguyen, a lawyer he'd met at a charity gala years ago. Clara was a force, sharp, relentless, known for taking on corporations that exploited the vulnerable. Over the phone, he explained Emma's story and Liam's note. "I need to know what happened to my son," he said, his voice raw. This wasn't just an accident. Clara arrived at the mansion within hours, her presence commanding yet warm. She listened as James recounted everything, her eyes narrowing at the mention of Noah Carter. "Carter?" she said, tapping her pen against her notebook. "As in Richard Carter, the construction magnate?" James nodded. Noah's his son. They were inseparable growing up. Clara's expression hardened. Richard Carter's company, Carter Construction, has an ugly history. They've been accused of cutting corners on public projects, schools, community centers, you name it. Always in low-income areas, where no one has the resources to fight back. Kids like Emma go to those schools. If Liam crossed paths with that, he was playing with fire. She pulled out her laptop, scrolling through files. "Here's something. Liam was part of a student volunteer program at his school, right? They worked on a project auditing local buildings for safety. I got a tip a while back that Carter's firm was using substandard materials on a school renovation in South LA. Dangerous stuff, crumbling walls, faulty wiring. If Liam found evidence of that, he'd have been a threat. James's stomach twisted. Liam, his quiet, idealistic son, had stumbled into a corporate scandal. He pictured him, notebook in hand, determined to do right by kids who had nothing. Kids like Emma, whose school was likely one of Carter's targets. The injustice burned. Wealthy men like Richard Carter profited while children studied in buildings that could collapse, and Liam had paid the price for trying to stop it. James clutched Liam's journal, tears spilling onto the pages. "He was just a kid," he whispered. "Why didn't he tell me?" Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because he was trying to be the hero you raised him to be. Let's find out what really happened." For Liam. As Clara left to dig deeper, James looked at Emma, now curled up on the couch with a book. She was the key to Liam's truth, a living reminder of his son's heart. But what had Liam uncovered? And how far would Richard Carter go to keep it buried? James Harper sat in the dim light of his study, Liam's note crumpled in his hand. The words, "I have to protect kids like you," burned in his mind. Clara Nguyen's revelation about Richard Carter's corrupt construction projects had shaken him, but Emma's memory of Liam's fight with Noah Carter pointed to something darker. If Liam had uncovered evidence against Carter, his death might not have been an accident. James needed answers, and he needed them now. Clara, ever the strategist, suggested they start at the park where Emma had seen the argument. The next morning they drove to Griffith Park, its swings and benches bustling with families. James's heart sank as he pictured Liam here, standing up to Noah, his best friend. Clara led the way, her notepad in hand, questioning vendors and regulars. A hot dog vendor, his face weathered from years outdoors, nodded when shown a photo of Liam. "Yeah, I remember that kid. Always polite, buying snacks for a little girl." He glanced at Emma, who stood close to James, clutching his sleeve. "That's her, right?" James nodded. "Did you see him with another boy? About his age?" The vendor squinted. "Yup, they were arguing, loud enough to turn heads. The other kid, dark hair, kind of lanky, was yelling about his dad. Said the blonde kid was going to wreck everything. Then he shoved him, hard. Blonde kid stumbled, nearly fell into the street. I yelled at them to cool it, and they split. Next day I heard about the accident. Never sat right with me." James's blood ran cold. The shove, the street. It wasn't just an argument, it was the moment that led to Liam's death. Clara scribbled notes, her jaw tight. "We need to talk to Noah," she said. "He's the key." That evening, James and Clara tracked Noah to his family's estate in Bel Air. Noah, now a lanky teenager with haunted eyes, opened the door. When he saw James, his face paled. "Mr. Harper," he stammered, I didn't expect you." "We need to talk, Noah," James said, his voice steady but firm. "About Liam." Inside, Noah slumped onto a couch, his hands trembling. Clara sat across from him, her gaze piercing but calm. "Noah," she began, "we know you and Liam fought at the park. We know you pushed him. What happened?" Noah's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he choked out. "Liam found papers, stuff about my dad's company. He said the school they were fixing wasn't safe, that kids could get hurt. He wanted to tell the principal. I begged him not to. My dad, he said it'd ruin us." Noah's voice broke. "I got mad. I pushed him. He fell into the street, and then the truck came. I panicked. I ran." James's hands clenched into fists. "You left him there?" he asked, his voice low, barely containing his anger. Noah sobbed. "I didn't know what to do. My dad found out, told me to keep quiet. He said he'd handle it, that the police would call it an accident. I was scared, Mr. Harper. I'm so sorry." Claire leaned forward. "Did your father threaten Liam, Noah?" Noah nodded, wiping his face. "He told Liam to back off, said he'd regret it. I think Dad made sure no one looked too hard at what happened." The room spun. James's rage at Richard Carter's manipulation battled with a crushing sorrow for Noah, a kid caught in his father's web. Carter had used his wealth and influence to bury the truth, leaving Liam's death as a footnote in a police report. Kids like Emma, who studied in those crumbling schools, were just collateral damage to men like him. Later that night, James found Emma in the backyard, sitting on a bench under a glowing moon. She'd overheard his talk with Noah, her small frame trembling with guilt. "I should have told someone sooner," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Maybe Liam would still be here." James knelt beside her, his own eyes stinging. "Emma, you were scared. You did the bravest thing by telling me now. Liam would be proud of you." He paused, his voice softening. "He always told you to believe in good things, right?" She nodded, her voice small. "But I'm afraid the world doesn't have room for that." James pulled her into a gentle hug, the moonlight casting their shadows on the grass. "It does. Because of people like Liam and you." They sat in silence, sharing the weight of their loss, the injustice of a system that let power silence truth. As Emma leaned against him, James's resolve hardened. Richard Carter's greed had taken his son and endangered countless others. This wasn't just about Liam anymore, it was about every child like Emma, forgotten by a world that valued profit over people. The truth was out, but the fight was far from over. James Harper sat in his study, the weight of Noah's confession still heavy on his chest. The boy's tearful admission and Richard Carter's ruthless cover-up fueled a fire in him, but James knew anger alone wouldn't honor Liam's memory. Noah was a kid, manipulated by a father who valued profit over lives. Punishing him wouldn't bring Liam back. Instead, James turned his focus to Richard Carter, the man whose greed had cost him his son and endangered countless others. With Clara Nguyen by his side, he vowed to make things right, not just for Liam, but for every child like Emma, forgotten by a broken system. Clara wasted no time. She filed a lawsuit against Carter Construction, compiling evidence of their shoddy work on South LA schools, cracked foundations, exposed wiring, all in buildings where kids like Emma studied. "This isn't just about Liam," Clara said, her voice fierce. "It's about exposing a system that lets men like Carter prey on the vulnerable." James nodded, his resolve steely. He'd use his wealth, his influence, to demand accountability, to ensure no other child paid the price for corporate greed. The next step was bigger. James called a press conference at a community center in South LA, its walls patched from years of neglect. Reporters packed the room, cameras flashing as he stood at the podium, Emma's small hand in his. He told Liam's story, his courage, his fight for justice, his death that wasn't an accident. His voice cracked as he spoke of Emma, the girl Liam had trusted him to protect. "My son saw what I didn't," James said. "He saw kids who needed help, not headlines. Today, I'm launching the Liam Harper Foundation to support homeless children with shelter, education, and a chance at a future." He turned to Emma, who stood nervously beside him. "Emma has something to say," he said, giving her an encouraging nod. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "I used to sleep in a shed, scared every night," she said. "Kids at school called me names, said I was nothing. But Liam saw me. He gave me food, told me I was strong. He made me believe I could be more." She paused, tears glistening. "There are kids like me everywhere. They just need someone to care." The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Reporters scribbled furiously, and James felt a swell of pride. Emma's words cut through the noise, a reminder of the human cost of indifference. The foundation, funded by James's personal fortune, would build safe havens, offer scholarships, and push for reforms to a welfare system that had failed Emma and countless others. Amid the chaos, Clara uncovered a lead that changed everything. Digging through old records, she found Emma's aunt, Sarah Wilson, living in Portland, Oregon. Sarah had searched for Emma after her sister's death, but was misled by a bureaucratic maze of foster care red tape. "She never stopped looking," Clara said, showing James a photo of a kind-faced woman. "Emma deserves to know she has family." James's heart sank. He'd grown attached to Emma, her quiet resilience filling the void Liam left. But he knew this was right. He arranged a trip to Portland, covering every expense to reunite Emma with Sarah. The night before they left, he found Emma in the living room, clutching a piece of paper. "I made this for you," she said, handing him a drawing. A bright star against a dark sky, with the words, Liam said you'd always be my light. James's throat tightened. Emma, this means the world, he said, pulling her into a hug. I'm not saying goodbye. I'll always be here for you, no matter where you are. She nodded, tears spilling. You kept Liam's promise. That's why he picked you. The next day at the Portland airport, Sarah ran to Emma, enveloping her in a tearful embrace. James watched, his heart aching but full. Sarah thanked him, promising to give Emma the home she deserved. As Emma waved goodbye, clutching her drawing's twin, a star for herself, James felt Liam's presence, a quiet assurance he'd done right. Back in LA, the lawsuit gained traction. Carter's empire began to crumble under public scrutiny, with schools promised repairs and families demanding justice. The Liam Harper Foundation sparked a movement, with donors and volunteers stepping up to help kids society had ignored. James found purpose in the work, but Emma's absence left a quiet ache. He kept her drawing on his desk, a reminder of the girl who'd saved him from despair. The fight against injustice continued, but for the first time, James saw hope. Liam's legacy wasn't just in the foundation, it was in Emma's courage, in Sarah's love, in every child given a chance. The world could change, one act of kindness at a time. But what would it take to keep that light burning? James Harper stood once more at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, the familiar scent of lilies mingling with the crisp night air. The moon cast a silver glow over Liam's grave, softening the edges of the headstone's inscription, Liam Harper, beloved son. James placed a fresh bouquet on the cold stone, his fingers lingering as he traced the letters. For the first time since Liam's death, the weight in his chest felt lighter, replaced by a quiet peace. He'd kept his son's promise, not just to Emma, but to the world Liam believed could be better. A letter from Emma rested in his pocket, its words already etched in his heart. Now settled in Portland with her Aunt Sarah, Emma was thriving. The photo she'd sent showed her in a crisp school uniform, her smile bright against a backdrop of autumn leaves. Liam was right. You're my hero, she'd written. I'm not scared anymore. James smiled, imagining Liam's grin, that mischievous spark that always hinted at hope. He looked up at the sky where a single star burned brightly, cutting through the darkness. It felt like Liam, watching, proud. Thank you, son, James whispered, his voice steady. You gave me a family, even if just for a moment. You showed me what matters. The Liam Harper Foundation was growing, its safe havens opening across California, offering shelter and scholarships to children society had overlooked. The lawsuit against Richard Carter had forced accountability, with schools being rebuilt and families finding justice. But James knew the real change lay in the small acts. The volunteers teaching kids to read, the donors funding warm beds, the communities rallying for reform. Liam's legacy wasn't in headlines. It was in every child given a chance to shine. I believe Liam's compassion and James's redemption highlight a truth. Wealth and power mean little without empathy. Yet, I wonder if the system can truly be fixed or if it's built to favor the Carters of the world. Some might argue that personal responsibility, not foundations, should drive change. Emma's aunt, after all, stepped up where bureaucracy failed. What do you think? Can one person's legacy shift a broken world? Or are we too entrenched in iniquity? I'm grateful for your time and thoughts. Your perspectives fuel these stories. Please share your views in the comments, follow our channel for more, and let's keep this conversation alive. Together, we can inspire action and hope. What do you think about the meaning of this story? Share your thoughts below and follow our channel to keep up with more amazing stories. Tomorrow,